the last interview of the afternoon. Of course, we've saved the best till last.
Whoa.
Mr. Irvine Welsh. Thank you for doing this.
Thanks for having me.
No, it's wonderful. I want to find out, we're going to talk about everything, of course, but I want to talk about you when you was a kid. I want to know what you were into before you became the Irvine Welsh we know.
I want a proper reclining seat that kind of flattens out. Yeah, I mean, what was into it? I mean, I think the reason I got into writing is because I was basically a kind of serial failure at everything else. I tried to get into music, played in some crappy bedroom bands, then I tried to kind of, I tried to do the 9-to-5 thing, I tried to sort of kind of be a dole model, and I just didn't really find my niche at anything that, anything I was good at wasn't lucrative, like kind of sitting around watching Crown Court in the afternoon, and anything that I kind of, that was lucrative, that I just didn't like, you know, I just didn't like working. I never liked school, I never liked work, I never liked being kind of the idea that you have to go somewhere for 9 o'clock every day and leave at 5, you know, or you know, right from the very first day when I went to primary school, I just thought, I've got to get the fuck out of here as soon as possible.
What were the bedroom bands like that you were in? What sort of music were you playing?
We played really, I mean, it's like, one of the great virtues about punk was that you could play really bad and get away with it, because it was like, the idea was that you are a work in progress, you know, the attitude comes before the musicianship, you know, you pick that up as you go along, basically, but we had the attitude, but the musicianship never came for some reason, and when you get kicked out of several really bad punk bands, it is a bit of a blow to the ego. Everybody else moves on, somebody can eventually masters 3 chords on the guitar, somebody eventually gets a kind of singing style that it might be pretty shite, but at least it's theirs and it's got an original thing to it. And I was always a guy who kind of basically got his jotters when there was any kind of progress, and it was a bit like being the kind of one of the thick or kind of dyslexic kids at school, which I was. You just got yourself going down the different streams, and you end up with all the kind of headbangers that are kind of self-masturbating and kind of spraying sort of jizz on the walls and all that. And that was kind of my experience of the bedroom bands.
I used to love coming up to Scotland and looking for like new bands, like obviously the Skids, Rosillos, the Exploited. It was so much, and it was a different thing. It was a different attitude.
There were some great bands. I mean, all these bands were out of Edinburgh as well, you know, and it was like, you know, there was a scene there, and I think that I was so London orientated at the time, you know, when I kind of wanted to move to London when I got to 16. I thought I just wanted, because that's what people kind of do. And because of that, I kind of really neglected that kind of rich kind of scene that was up there, that sort of indigenous kind of scene of fantastic bands. And you know, they were kind of, these 3 in particular were kind of local Edinburgh bands. There was much more besides. I mean, the Scars were a really interesting band at that time that I was into. But I kind of, I hightailed it down to London as soon as I could, basically.
Didn't you work for Hackney Council for a certain time?
I worked in Hackney, but I worked for the Greater London Enterprise Board, which was kind of part of GLC, which was wound up, but I actually worked in Hackney on sort of economic development programmes there.
When was it you thought, I'm going to try something else, I'm going to be a writer? When did you get that inclination? What inspired you to try it?
I think that what happened was that I was kind of, I kind of hit a low, and I'd sort of, I'd gone through this kind of heroin phase, and I decided that I just had to basically get out of town, and I borrowed some money and a detox, and I went across the United States, and I was like about 22, 21, and I was travelling around America in a Greyhound bus, basically, and I just started to, I'd never kind of really written before since school, so I just started to write this diary, and it was all kind of, it was all self-aggrandizing bullshit in that kind of junky way that you make excuses for yourself and sort of demean everybody else. Just a massive exercise in self-justification. But I noticed that a lot of it was just completely fictionalised. There was kind of sort of characters that didn't exist and all that coming into it. And I thought, it was a while later when I looked back at it, I thought, well, some of the stuff actually isn't bad. You know, it's a mixture of kind of reminiscences and weird sketches and sort of comedic set pieces. I thought I should try and actually use this as the basis of a novel. So I was in this job, which I was back up in Edinburgh. I was working for the local council, which I really, really hated, and I could just see. I thought this is my last chance to do something creative, and I'd kind of, you know, I'd been into the punk scene, and then you know, that was that kind of big surge of energy, and then there was that kind of downturn with Thatcherism, and everybody just felt kind of sort of beaten and sort of you know, just fed up basically. And then you had Acid House again, and I started going out and kind of dancing in fields, and that sort of got me energised. And I thought, this is my last shot at kind of doing something creative. Otherwise, I'm going to be a kind of pen pusher or a jakey, basically, for, you know, the rest of my life. So I wrote the novel, and it kind of I got very, very spoiled, because most writers, you know, you have to experience a lot of rejection. I mean, I'd done all that with the bands, basically, so it was kind of I was braced for it, but the first publisher I sent it to published it, so there was no real. And you know, and the books just started to do really well. First as a cult book, and then it started to really sell well. Then there was a stage play; it started to sell better, and then there was a movie. It started to kind of went global. So there was no real struggle for me as a writer, and that was kind of, in a way, that brought its own kind of madness, because you kind of you think, how the fuck did I get from here to there in such a short space of time, without really trying, by doing something I enjoyed, rather than actually banging my head against the wall, trying to sort of to get to that point.
Yeah, it's quite a. You sort of skirted around, I think. You just said, when you was in Hackney, you said, well, and I had a heroin habit, and how did that happen? How did you get into that?
Oh, I can't. It's one of these things. It's like you can't really. For me, it was like, it was very. It's funny. I was listening to Segs talking there, and he was talking about the Velvet Claw and all that. To me, it was just a part of kind of doing everything else. I mean, when I started doing drugs, there was no kind of real drug education. I mean, I was just told by my mum, don't smoke hash. If anybody gives you hash, don't take it. So I was so terrified when somebody passed me a joint at a party as a kid, and I thought I would instantly fucking explode. You know, my head would sort of would blow up, or you know, I would just fall over with some kind of heart attack. And I smoked a joint, and I thought, fuck me, there's nothing in this. And that kind of serially informed everything that I'd done after that. You know, it's like the speed, yeah, it's not going to kill me. Yeah, great. Yeah, acid, yeah, great. So heroin, the very same thing. And because it is so insidious that it gets a grip on you, you think this is fantastic, but everybody else is looking at you in a strange way. Like, no, you're actually falling apart here. You know, and. But there's that inner rationalisation, you know, you're stealing money from your mum's purse and you're caught red-handed and she's kind of screaming, you go, come on, you know what? You know, so it's like that kind of thing that you don't actually realise kind of how bad it was until retrospectively. And you come off it and you see all these people that kind of look at you in a strange way, like you've got two heads, and in many cases you've kind of wrecked a lot of friendships and wrecked a lot of relationships irreparably. Some of them, you know, can be kind of repaired and all that, but there's still a kind of tendency to think that I was going through this bad period, but I'm out of it now, so let's just carry on as normal. But you've got to acknowledge the wreckage that you've caused, basically. And I think, you know, that's one of the most difficult things now. And you see people, you know, I mean, it's like I meet people that I've known like 30 odd years ago, and they still look at me in a very strange kind of sort of way sometimes. And you know, you realise that the kind of hurt you can cause to people close to you you can't really, you only get a very sort of small indication of it, and then you learn when you see other people in that position, and you're the guy on the other side, just how kind of damaging it can be. Yeah?
How long was that period? How long was you addicted?
It was kind of like it was 2 periods. It was a brief period of when I was 20, which was a very brief flirtation. I thought, I like this too much. It's got to be bad for me in some way. And I kind of pulled back, and then when I got to, I think it was about 23, 24, probably for about, it's probably about 3 years actually, but only really counted as 2 years because the first year was great, and I never really noticed much about it, but the first year was great, the second year it was getting a bit dodgy, and then the third year it was just a mess, basically. That, you know, you have to, at that point, you kind of have to sort of, to realise it, but I think that the interesting thing about something like addiction to me is that you're either going towards it or you're going away from it. And once I'd actually stopped, I realised that I had no emotional kind of pull from it anymore. It was just like I kind of passed through it almost. And almost like it's like you're a kind of missile kind of shot into the sun, you know, and you're kind of burning away, and hopefully you come out the other side. And but I think, unfortunately, for some people, the sun is a really, really big sun, you know, and they just never get kind of through it, you know. Some people are going through space towards it, and they just, you know, they're not actually, you know, they're never actually going to get there in their lifespan. And other people have kind of maybe been through it in some kind of previous incantation, they're just coming out of the side that way, you know.
A lot of people, I've known musicians who they are strong people, they're physically strong people, and they said, I can control this. But it's very rare that you can, isn't it?
No, you can't. I mean, that's the whole point of it. That's the conceit of it. And eventually, I think that you know, I mean, drugs are there to make fools of us all. You know, and it's like they kind of they feed our ego and our conceit, while at the same time kind of destroying our kind of sort of, you know, our capacity and our sort of our intellect and our humanity. I mean, everybody becomes the personality of the drug. I mean, if you look at some alcoholic bum, you can go to any city in the world and talk to some alcoholic bum, and you're basically talking to the same person. You're talking to alcohol. Basically, it's the very same with heroin, it's the very same with any drug. All the stories, all the excuses, all the stuff like, I would have been a fantastic guy if this woman hadn't have let me down and sort of broken my heart. You know, I would have been a fantastic guy if this mate hadn't have ripped me off. I would have been a fantastic guy if, you know, it's the very same kind of sort of narrative that comes out right across, you know, and it's a very kind of basic narrative. And you're kind of, you know it yourself, and we've all done that and said it, but that, we've all been there to an extent, but that is the personality of the addict, basically.
You cleaned up for a good long time, and then ecstasy pulled you back in, didn't it?
Ecstasy, yeah. I mean, I kind of, I was very, very gun-shy about any drug after my experiences with heroin, so I was very anti-drugs for a while. I remember, like, when Shoom started up in London, I remember I must have been the only person that went to original Shoom and never took ecstasy, you know. Everybody was having a great time jumping around, and I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, you know, because it made no sense. The music made no sense unless you were off your tits on E. I remember just a couple of years ago, I went to the 25th anniversary of Shoom, and I was off my tits on E that time, just as a nostalgia thing to get into it. But it was strange, like, so, talking to everybody from that era, and you know, and they were talking about these great nights in Shoom, and I'd only been twice, and I'd been absolutely straight as fuck, you know. So again, it was that thing. I had to have this pill forced down me, and then I thought, "Oof, I'm off again." But I mean, it did. For me, it was like when the pills got shit, I got into cocaine in a big way, and at that time I had a lot of money coming in, so you can kind of burn through a lot of money on cocaine. And in some ways, that's what it's for, really. You know, it's like.
What made you go back to the Trainspotting characters? Was it just the fact you'd written it before, and it was like a good stuff, or?
Yeah, I mean, I've written loads and loads and loads about them. I mean, with the Sky Boys book, I had so many of the stories came right from that era that when I first wrote Trainspotting, I didn't know how to write a book, you know, because I had no I had no idea how you would write a novel. And I thought, well, you start off with how they get into heroin and all that, and this, you know, so you have all the story about the community disintegrating and kind of mass unemployment and the drug economy taking over. And at the time, being younger, I thought, this is actually boring the shit out of me, this kind of stuff. I just want to go bang right into the life and not explain it. So I cut all that stuff out. But when I looked back on it, I got interested in writing about the 80s because it was such a kind of pivotal decade. That kind of, you know, the way we are now, the kind of the lives we lead now, you know, are very much determined by the choices that we made as a society in the 80s, not just in Britain, but right across the West. So I wanted to kind of look at that decade and the consequences, and I thought these guys are the sort of tools to do that, to tell that story, and they were already there, and material was already there. But I've never really stopped writing about them. I mean, any character that I write that interests me, I've not really stopped writing about. I had a character in a book called Glue, called Juice Terry, who I'm bringing back a whole novel about him as a sort of older guy, as a sort of sex case taxi driver in Edinburgh. You can't believe there's any sex case taxi drivers, but this is I brought him back as this guy. Like.
I know you've written obviously many novels, short stories, also plays for theatre. You're now writing stuff for screenplays, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm kind of trying to do my own stuff and trying to get stuff made, and we're trying to. We did Filth and Ecstasy, and obviously Trainspotting and the Acid House before, and trying to get some more adaptations done. Doing a follow-up to the movie Spring Breakers that Harmony Korine did with James Franco. So I'm trying, and I'm also kind of working on. I'm doing a lot of script kind of doctoring stuff for studios, which is kind of basically really fucking horrible shit movies that you wouldn't put your name to. But they'll call up and say, put some character into this, or kind of up the action in this, or cut this back, or extend this. So it's kind of, it's not particularly rewarding work, but it's kind of decently paid.
How much control do you relinquish when you start working with the big movie companies?
Oh, completely. I mean, you're a hired gun, and you can't really. I think you do anyway with any kind of screenplay, even if any kind of film stuff, even if you're working for an independent. You have to realise that, I mean, the great thing about a book is it's just you've got total freedom to do anything you like, but with movies it's such a collaborative thing. It's the director gets cast as the kind of auteur and all that, but that's just a sort of convention really. I mean, it's like, you've got the screenwriter, you've got the producers, they're all going to have input, sometimes the financiers have got input, the director obviously kind of puts their stamp on it, and the editor, and that is one of the biggest sort of key parts of the process. But you've also got all the the designers, and they can determine the look of the film, and the way the actors perform as well is like no two actors are going to perform a part in exactly the same way. So there's so many kind of elements in it. Your voice is a very small part of it, and that's the way it should be, I think, because that's what filmmaking is. It's a collaborative art.
How have you ended up living in Chicago? How does that come about?
I mean, I always think, one of my philosophies of life is that you never know who you're going to meet, you never know where you're going to go. And I mean, I've kind of I've lived most of my life between London and Edinburgh, but I've lived in Dublin, Amsterdam, San Francisco, and Chicago, and it's all been through chance, basically. It's like my wife's from Chicago, and I kind of met her in a bar, and I had no interest in kind of sort of being in Chicago, but I just saw this bird, this big tall bird with big American choppers, big teeth, like, I thought, you don't have fucking teeth like that in Britain, and I was fascinated by her teeth, especially not in Scotland. Like, you're lucky if you have teeth in Scotland at all. Like, so I was kind of, so I was fascinated by her teeth, and my chat-up line was, "You've got big American choppers," So that's how I ended up in Chicago.
You haven't got any. How involved are you? You're not involved in the Scottish independence debate?
I mean, I've been sort of I've got my own view on it, and I've been sort of kind of tweeting and sort of about it. I've been on a couple of programs about it, but I mean, it's like I can't vote. So I feel a bit. I do feel a bit kind of conflicted, kind of pontificating about it, because it's up to the people there really to decide what they want to do. As I say, I can't vote, but obviously it's close to my heart, so I've got to have an opinion of it. I've got to be able to voice the opinion. But it's interesting. I think I think the whole debate has been fantastic for the country.
It's a shame we never saw the TV debate down here. We didn't get it at all.
I saw the Sam and Darling debate online, and it encapsulated everything I hate about politics. And to me, the thing downturned when they actually got politicians back involved. The great thing is that, particularly with the Yes campaign, it's been very much a grassroots campaign. It's taken the power away from the politicians and given it back to the people, and kind of challenging this idea that you have to have this kind of neoliberal consensus between two parties that are identical or three parties that are identical, and you have to kind of grandfather in to the system all these kind of people like the sort of the aristocracy, the House of Lords, the City of London investment bankers, the Etonian kind of public school elite, all these people who somehow along the way have been deemed essential to the running of a political system, when they're just fucking useless parasites that are creaming everything off for themselves. And I think that one of the things that I've always believed in is that if Scotland became independent, that I don't think England would put up with all that kind of shit for very long as well. They would say, we're going to have some of this too.
Yeah, let's hope so. Tell us about yourself when you're not writing. I know you like football, I know you like boxing.
The Jambos are in the house here. Yeah, I mean, I love, I've been, I love football. I've kind of been a Hib supporter, kind of, my local team, but I've also tried to take an interest in any other team where I've lived. I mean, when I lived in London, I was a season ticket holder at West Ham. When I lived in Dublin, I was a season ticket holder at Bohemians, and when I lived in Amsterdam, I was a season ticket holder at Ajax, which was a good time to be because they won the European Cup at that time with the guy Louis van Gaal, who's now at Man United. But so I've tried to take it. I think you get for a local football team, you really get a feel. You really get a feel of the town you're living in when you start to invest in a local football team, and you really get to meet some fantastic characters as well. I've got into American sport a little bit, particularly ice hockey. I go to the Chicago Blackhawks games a lot.
What about the Chicago? Is it Chicago Bears?
The Bears. I've never really got into American football, and I decided to be obnoxious and support the Green Bay Packers, who are the Bears' rivals, because I don't like that American fetish for naming sports teams after animals. So the Packers are named after industrial workers, and I kind of like that. It feels very British.
What about yourself? What's the next big challenge?
I've got a lot of projects on the go. I've got a couple of film and TV projects at various stages of development, and I've got the new book coming out in April, and I've got the existing book, The Sex Life of Siamese Twins, coming out in America in February. So I've got to promote that there, get that out, and then come back over and do the new book here in April, and then maybe do it in the continent. So it's just like kind of constantly trying to clear the decks to the next project.
What is the new book? Tell us about the new one.
The one that's out now is The Sex Lives of Siamese Twins, which is kind of, it's set in Miami, and it's about two women, one who's a personal trainer, and the other one who's an overweight artist, and they become obsessed with each other. The personal trainer is the artist becomes a client of the personal trainer. And it's about the obsession with, the two big American obsessions with kind of, like food and body image. Because when you have a conversation in America, the kind of, in Britain, the kind of default conversation is the weather, basically. In America, it's the default conversations about food. It's like, what did you have to eat yesterday? I had this pie, and I'm going to make this tomorrow. So it's all about food, basically. So they're obsessed with food in America, and people are also obsessed with health and dieting. So you get these two very different sort of kind of competing obsessions in a way. So I was trying to work through that, that understanding of it, and because it's set in Miami, it's a very sort of. I've got a place in Miami, and I go down there to get away from Chicago winters. And when I get out there, you get up, you think everybody's wearing practically no clothes, so you do the same, and then you realise, oh fuck, they're gorgeous. You're a kind of a fat milk bottle skinned bastard for leaf, So immediately you start to sort of eat better and go out to the gym and all that kind of stuff. So it's interesting the way that that kind of, all that kind of stuff, the climate and the visual culture of it, makes for a very different type of book than if I was writing about Edinburgh or London.
I'd like to know about yourself as a consumer, and I'm going to ask you in a very almost cliched way, but if you were sent away right now to a desert island, what are the 3 novels that you would take?
What would I take? This is going to sound incredibly kind of sort of kind of narcissistic, but I'd probably take 3 more, and just to make sure that to make sure I've actually done them. But other than that, I'd probably go back to the stuff that I read earlier. I'd probably go back to Orwell. A lot of people, a lot of working class people who get into literature, kind of, he's always one of the kind of sort of the backstop. So I'd probably take a couple of one of his books, maybe one of a Scottish writer like James Gilman or William McIlvanney, and maybe some kind of more international writer like Dostoevsky or Tolstoy or something.
How about music?
Music, I'd probably, I'd just have to take Nevermind the Bollocks, because it was the album that changed my life and changed a lot of people's life. It was kind of sort of, it was way into punk. And I'd probably take the Alabama Three's first album, kind of Exile in Cold Harbor Lane. I'm not just saying that because sex is there, but. And I think I'd probably I'd go for one of the Prime and Scream albums, like I don't know, probably Exterminator.
Oh, we've run out of time. Thank you very much indeed.
Thanks very much for coming.
Wonderful.
Thank you.
Don't forget, there's books for sale over here in Irvine and a sign.